Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the home stretch of the National Tribal Energy Summit 2019. Our next session this morning will focus on transmission and infrastructure improvements in Indian country. Our presenters are Patricia Hoffman, the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Department of Energy Office of Electricity, and Dionne E. Thompson, Senior Vice President for the Western Area Power Administration. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our speakers.
So good morning. Good morning. I hope everybody is doing well this morning. I want to thank NCSL and the Office of Indian Energy for having us here today. It's an honor to be able to come and talk to you about some of the work that we are doing in the space of transmission and distribution. But I also would like to just acknowledge I had the honor of being at the breakfast yesterday and listening to some of the discussions. And I have to admit, the Director Frost really gave a passionate discussion during the women's breakfast, which reminded me of the value and the honor it is to work for the federal government, but also to provide service to everybody who comes to the department for help. So within the Department of Energy for the Office of Electricity, just a little bit about our organization. Our organization is primarily a research organization within the Department of Energy. We do a lot of work on the transmission and distribution system. The topics of microgrids fall under our portfolio. We do a lot of work on battery, grid scale storage, and so I'll talk to you a little bit about that and some of the research efforts. But primarily what I wanted to do was actually provide you some of the tools and some of the things that are available that are through our offices, that's on our website, that might be helpful to you as you consider projects. One of the things that we've all learned relatively quickly is that the electricity space is a very complicated space as you start dealing with the utilities markets, what's happening in the region of who owns what from a utility perspective. But really it comes down to how do you want to optimize your system moving forward and what risks do you want to own or take as you look at some of the projects, whether it's a renewable project, whether you look at storage and a combination of technologies and looking at building management. It really comes down to the capacity and capability of an entity to be able to really think about what risks do you want to undertake. And I will put in a plug. I know you had some great sessions on the cybersecurity as well, but any project that one takes in the energy space nowadays really have to do an independent cyber assessment, really look at your risks from a cyber point of view. Although it's not our responsibility, I really would like to continue to emphasize that we're in a new world with respect to cybersecurity. So if you have anything that deals with firmware, software, to please continue to do rigor around cyber assessments and make that part of the project regardless of the scope of the project. So with that, I just want to hit a couple high-level points. Our organization also does permitting for cross-border transmission lines. So every once in a while you may hear from our office if there is a transmission line that goes across international borders. The permitting, the tribal consultation process comes through us in cases where there is a transmission project that goes across international borders, so between U.S. Canada and U.S. Mexico. So lessons learned from our research and some of the projects that we worked on. First, I'd like to talk about energy storage. We do bulk energy storage research R&D, primarily on flow batteries. We'll look at vanadium. Vanadium was a project that we had, which was more like a 4-hour flow battery bulk storage system. We're in the megawatt scale from a storage point of view, but we are looking at sodium ion and other zinc manganese, other type of energy storage projects. But the important thing is that we do have a DOE energy storage database. It's called energystorageexchange.org. It has basically a collection of all the large-scale energy storage projects that have been out there. It is a good research or good tool for folks to look at if you're looking at energy storage. It'll go through the different projects, it'll go through the state policies, it'll go through some of their experiences, but it does provide a reference for people that are looking at large-scale energy storage to say, is there somebody else I can talk to and learn from if you're going forward and looking at placing advanced energy storage on there. As well, that EnergyStorageExchange.org also has the relevant state and federal policies around energy storage. As you all know, that some states are encouraging energy storage with storage requirements on the system. But as we look at the change in the evolution of the grid and the transmission and distribution system, energy storage is going to become more and more a key component in the electric system moving forward. So it is definitely going to be an opportunity, whether you're looking at a microgrid at the distribution level or if you're connected to the transmission system. All one needs to do is look at the duck curve in California. If you're not familiar with the duck curve, it is the very strong ramp rates that are going on in California as one is transitioning from renewable technology to other generation forms in California. What we need is flexible technologies, flexible generation moving forward. So what will become more valuable is whether it's demand response, whether it's energy storage, or whether it's fast ramping generation. Those are going to be the technologies that are going to be valued for the energy system moving forward. So as you look forward for opportunities in Indian energy and some of the projects that you're looking at, that is something to really keep in mind moving forward. In addition, on DOE's website in energy.gov for the Office of Electricity, we do have a couple other energy storage documents that I thought might be interesting to you. We have an energy storage system guide for compliance with safety codes and standards. That is a useful document that's out there on the DOE's website that really goes through some of the safety codes, the requirements, as one's looking at bulk energy storage systems. And also there is a DOE EPRI energy storage handbook that also is a valuable resource tool for looking at large bulk scale energy storage. So the other area that I wanted to talk about a little bit, I have two more points that I really want to make, one is on microgrids. We are looking at, and we've had projects in microgrids for many years, started working on microgrid projects with DoD and some of the military bases. A lot of our work has been done in a partnership with the national laboratories, primarily Sandia National Laboratories. We've done work on microgrid controllers. We've done work on cybersecurity aspects of microgrids. And now our research is really looking at connected microgrids. And it's really trying to take advantage of the best of both worlds, where you can have a microgrid but still be connected to the bulk transmission system. I would say the microgrid area has really developed great strides. You hear the term more and more, microgrids. But when you're looking at investing in a microgrid program, the lessons that we have learned is you really need to have a good understanding of your demand requirements and your loads, and looking at a good building analysis of your building portfolio so you actually can size what is a combination of technologies appropriately. And what I'm talking about is the size of your solar system plus an energy storage system, plus how you look at your demand within your set of buildings within your complex. And so that is a balancing act. And the way we are moving forward more and more, which I would like to say is really looking at the grid writ large, but also looking at microgrids, is becoming more of an optimization discussion of what technology can better fit all the services you require, but also how the technologies themselves fit together. And so you really want to look for synergistic technologies, but technologies that are complementary as you look at what demand, what load you can manage as you're installing energy storage and the solar system. And so from my perspective, it's an optimization discussion. We do have a microgrid design toolkit that was developed by Sandia National Laboratory. on our website that does give some insights on where microgrid technologies are going and some of the lessons learned from that. As I back up further and look at the transmission system writ large, I would like to just take a moment and say the Department of Energy looked at investment in the transmission and distribution system with technologies, and the technologies including smart meters, automatic switching, switchgear, power flow devices. And as we move forward, the thing that I would like you to think about is how do you start planning for some of the data that you can start collecting on your system. So as you continue to build out, whether it's a microgrid, whether it's a solar system, you can build the data platforms and do the engineering, but also gain the information that will add value moving forward. So for example, if you live in a hurricane-prone area, and I'll close with some discussion on that, but having the outage management data really provides value as you look at the efficiency and effectiveness of any restoration process or any information from a power quality point of view and some of the future technologies you may want to invest in. So one of the things that we have been driving is what is the sensing capability that we want to look at the transmission and distribution system moving forward, so we can fine-tune where some harmonics are occurring on the system or where there is some power quality issues, but really look at where the technology advancements are most cost-effective. And so that's something that we're trying to really build in parallel, because at the end of the day, we want to actually continue to look at optimization of where do you get the best value for solar, where do you get the best value as you add information technology and you can do the analysis. So going to the last point I want to make is actually more related to FEMA than it is DOE, but we're trying to spend some time with FEMA in looking at the pre-disaster mitigation funds, some of the DRRA, kind of 6% that's available, and it is available to tribal energy as well, and looking at projects that we can get more projects in the energy / electricity space. And don't have a complete answer, but I know that there are huge, I would say huge, but more dollars available than sometimes what we would have to have available with respect to electricity infrastructure investments. But as folks are looking at their tribal mitigation plans or your hazard mitigation plans that FEMA looks at, strongly consider some of the infrastructure improvements with respect to the electricity infrastructure as part of those documents that you would look at for those that can and are interested in applying for FEMA pre-disaster mitigations. Because at the end of the day, FEMA now has a dedicated funding stream as a result of DRRA, which is a 6% of any disaster relief funding that they get from Congress, they can put aside for mitigation funding. So I bring that up to you, because I just want to continue to say, we know for a fact that if we can keep electricity going, we actually aid in any sort of restoration process. We make life a little bit easier as we look at any sort of disaster and improvements in that area. And so there's an opportunity to keep the momentum going in this area. Whether you're looking at undergrounding, whether you're looking at switchgear, whether you're looking at advanced technology, I think there's an opportunity. So the latest announcement for pre-disaster mitigation funding came out on August 26th in 2019. It is, if you do the Google search on it, it is available for people to look at. So I just wanted to make sure, so while I'm here, is just make sure that that's on some of your all's radar. And so that's where I'm going to close out and let Dionne take from there on some of the things that they're doing at WAPA.
So good morning. My name is Dionne Thompson, and as was stated, I'm with the Western Area Power Administration. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about what we're doing with our tribal partners. But before that, I want to go through a little bit about WAPA itself. The Western Area Power Administration, WAPA for short, is at the Department of Energy, and our interactions with tribes, I'm going to talk about our interactions with tribes in the West. At WAPA, an important part of delivering on our mission is our relationship with tribal customers. We recognize our trust responsibilities with tribal sovereign nations and are committed to our government-to-government relationships. A little bit about who we are. WAPA is a federal power marketing administration. We're one of 4 under the Department of Energy. We market power from our generating agencies, namely the Bureau of Reclamation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the International Boundary and Water Commission, which is part of the State Department. We market the power at the lowest cost possible, giving preference to nonprofit customers who are defined by law. Native American tribes are among our customers. We are one of the 4 agencies, as I mentioned, at the Department of Energy, the Power Marketing Administrations. And WAPA has, as you can see, the largest footprint of all the PMAs. We serve an area that covers from Minnesota and Iowa all the way west to California, and north at the Canadian border and North Dakota and Montana, all the way down to the southernmost point of Texas. WAPA's almost 1,500 employees work around the clock to sell power and safely and securely operate and maintain an integrated transmission system that provides wholesale energy to nonprofit utilities who then provide electricity to more than 40 million customers in the West. So you can see, and as you can imagine, it's a big responsibility. And we take our mission seriously, which is to market and deliver clean, renewable, reliable, cost-based federal hydroelectric power and related services. WAPA is divided into 4 regions and 1 management center within a 15-state footprint. We have regional offices in Folsom, California, Phoenix, Arizona, Billings, Montana, and Loveland, Colorado. And we also have a management center located in Montrose, Colorado. We have 10 power systems that roughly follow river basins that constitute our marketing area. We have a number of functional responsibilities, including construction, design, maintenance, natural resources, planning, power marketing, power system operation, transmission infrastructure program, and transmission marketing. We also voluntarily follow Federal Energy Regulatory Commission rules and have an open access transmission tariff on file at FERC. We also comply with North American Electric Reliability Corporation reliability standards. WAPA balances a distributed and broad system over its large footprint, making us one of the top 10 largest transmission utilities in the country. WAPA has 3 lines of business it pursues: federal hydropower, transmission system service, and the transmission infrastructure program. The hydropower program, under that program, we market over 10,000 megawatts of electricity from 57 hydroelectric plants, and we buy and sell power to provide firm electric service to our customers. We have over 17,000 miles of transmission lines across our footprint, and we operate in 3 balancing areas. I'll talk a little more about our transmission infrastructure program later in the presentation. In 2014, WAPA published its strategic roadmap for 2024. It was updated in 2016 to ensure that WAPA remains focused on meeting its customers' needs, is responsive to industry change, and is aligned with DOE goals. The roadmap consists of 4 overarching goals called critical pathways, and is aimed towards supporting our mission. Those include the evolution of services in response to the needs of a diverse customer base and industry demands, mutually beneficial partnerships, building and sustaining productive relationships, business, technology, and organizational excellence, expanding on organizational excellence by applying knowledge, technology, innovation, and engaging partners for optimal effectiveness, and of course, powering the energy frontier with this 3-pronged approach. The roadmap describes WAPA's plan to carry out its mission and vision over a 10-year period. And our vision is to continue to provide premier power marketing and transmission services to our customers, as well as contribute to enhancing America's security and sustaining our nation's economic vitality. And we do that through provision of power to our customers, as well as to a number of military installations across the West. WAPA has a list of core values by which our employees abide through interactions with each other and our customers. And we strive to achieve these values, which include listening to understand and speaking with purpose, seeking to share, with our partners, being curious, learning more and doing better, and then doing that on a repeat cycle. Respecting ourselves and others and the environment, doing what is right, doing what is safe, and serving like our lives depend on it. So a little bit more in the way of specifics about what we do, who we are, and what we manage. WAPA has nearly 700 wholesale electric customers, including a number of many Native American tribes. And of course, our Native American tribes are actually direct customers, whereas everyone else is a wholesale customer. So as you can see, we market the power, we control parts of the grid, we manage interties where we interconnect with our customers and with the eastern and western interconnection, and we provide open access transmission to those who need it. We manage $4.3 billion worth of assets. We have 114,863 structures, 17,231 miles of transmission lines, 322 substations, 291 transformers, 661 buildings, and 487 communication sites. As I mentioned, we have nearly 700 customers, and those are preference customers, and those are defined by law. They include cities and towns, rural electric cooperatives, irrigation districts, public water districts, public power districts, federal and state agencies, and Native American tribes. WAPA has three sources for its funding from the federal government and from our customers. We use a variety of financing methods, including appropriations, alternative financing, which is primarily customer advances, and use of receipt authorities. Our funding is pretty complex, and we also have what we call revolving funds, where several of our power systems are funded through these revolving funds that don't actually require direct appropriations. Our appropriations, which only constitute about 6% of our budget, are repaid to the federal government with interest. And that comes from repayment from customers through our rates, and with the exception of some customers that are exempted by law. And we recover also from our ratepayers all of the expenses for our generating agencies that are power-related expenses, as well as investments, and that's also required by law. So WAPA also hosts the Transmission Infrastructure Program, also known as TIP. The TIP account was established to implement Title III of Section 301 of the Hoover Plant Act of 1984, and was amended by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act in 2009. The amendment provided WAPA with a $3.25 billion borrowing authority to assist and facilitate the development of transmission in the West. In order for any entity to be eligible to take advantage of that borrowing authority, they need to make sure that their transmission project has at least one terminus in WAPA's footprint, and it has a clear benefit for the public. And that project must not adversely affect our operations. So a little more about our interactions with our tribal customers. The Navajo Nation is our largest customer, tribal customer, and it numbers 23 out of 681 customers with long-term power sales contracts. Our powerful partnership with the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority is a long-standing one, and we've worked together with a strong and cooperative partnership for more than 50 years. We've accomplished a lot of good things in that time. For example, in 1992, before the advent of state renewable portfolio standards, and even before the word solar was a household word, WAPA was assisting the NTUA with a plan to deliver solar energy to remote off-grid Navajo tribal families. And we've also brought NTUA customers into one of our balancing authorities and helping them to avoid a 400% rate increase. And in 2017, we helped bring a utility-scale solar farm online by connecting it to the larger grid through our Kayenta substation in Arizona. From time to time, WAPA is able to provide new allocations of power at an existing power facility. For example, in 2017, we announced new reallocations of Hoover Dam's federal power. And 31 new customers came on board, along with 23 Native American tribes. Many of those were tribal utilities. Tribes are also eligible to be preference customers, as I mentioned before, and if there is a tribal government-owned utility that has physical transmission infrastructure that is able to receive high-voltage power, they can become direct customers. And if not, we also have arrangements that benefit tribes through what's called intertribe crediting. What the tribe can do is enter into a contractual arrangement with a utility to receive what's called benefit crediting. For example, there are 53 tribes in WAPA's Colorado River Storage Project Management Center. And in that territory, they receive allocations. And 46 of them do so through benefit crediting arrangements with utilities. WAPA is able to provide technical assistance for pre-feasibility analysis on proposed interconnection requests from our tribal customers. Interested tribes have to go through the Department of Energy application process, after which it's referred to WAPA. If a tribe is already a customer, then that tribe should contact their customer liaison if they have interests. It's standard for all of WAPA's customers to have liaisons, so it should be an easy way to initiate a process. And as described earlier, WAPA can also serve as a transmission partner for renewable energy projects on tribal land. This photo was taken at one of our Kayenta solar facilities celebrations. WAPA provided NTUA access to the bulk electric system through an intertie with WAPA's existing transmission infrastructure in the local area. And this is one example of helping tribes bring energy to market. So in conclusion, by working closely with customers, truly understanding their needs and responding to their challenges, WAPA is positioned to continue delivering on its mission now and well into the future. We are committed to serving tribal utilities and customers in other communities across the West. Thank you.
Another big round of applause for Patricia and Dionne. Thank you so much. That's an amazing amount of information, and thank you for delivering it to us this morning. What we're going to do is take a quick break. We have the Undersecretary coming your way next, but we want to give you a few seconds just to get up, move the blood around, and maybe grab a cup of coffee, and we'll be right back here in just a moment. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. If we could please have you retake your seats, we'd like to get started again. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Our keynote speech today will be given by Undersecretary of Energy Mark Menezes. The Honorable Mark Menezes serves as the department's principal advisor on energy policy and on a wide array of existing and emerging energy technologies. The Undersecretary is responsible for driving transformative energy policy and technology solutions through coordinated planning, management, and performance of the department's energy programs. Prior to being confirmed as Undersecretary, Mr. Menezes was an executive with Berkshire Hathaway Energy in Washington, D.C.'s office. Before joining Berkshire, Mr. Menezes was a partner at Hunton and Williams LLP, where he headed the regulated markets and energy infrastructure practice group. Prior to Hunton, he served as Chief Counsel, Energy and Environment for the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Energy and Commerce, serving as Chief Negotiator for the House Majority in the enactment of the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Before his service with House Energy and Commerce, he was Vice President with Central and Southwest and upon its merger with American Electric Power, served as Vice President and Associate General Counsel for Federal and State Legislative and Regulatory Affairs. Mr. Menezes has been named in National Journal's Hill 100 Top Congressional Staff for his work on both energy and environmental matters. He has been a frequent guest speaker and lecturer before numerous associations and civic groups, including legal education seminars. He has co-authored numerous articles, a practice manual, and been extensively quoted in the press. Mr. Menezes is a graduate of Louisiana State University, receiving both his undergraduate and Juris Doctorate degrees from LSU. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Undersecretary Mr. Mark W. Menezes.
Thank you, Gary, for that kind and what is apparently a lengthy introduction. I need to do a little editing, I think, on that. But thank you very much. And thank you for your attendance here today. This is a very important and top priority for the department. I hope that you take that away from you as you have been here over the summit. Yesterday I had the privilege to participate in a roundtable that was put together that included the Vice President, Pence, as well as the Secretary of Interior, David Bernhardt. And it was very edifying and informative, an opportunity to hear from your leaders on issues in the energy world that they confront. And it ranged from both aspirational goals and desires to very real practical problems, if you will, that need to be overcome to really unlock the potential across our tribal lands and in Alaska, to really give you all the freedom and opportunities to make your choices and to embrace energy of all forms and choices, but also to work out the practical implications on terms of being able to permit, to be able to enjoy the revenues, to share the benefits, just everyday practical problems. So I want to thank you all for having your leaders participate in that. It was quite informative. I took copious notes, and I think you made big impressions on the Secretary and, of course, on the Vice President. And so, as I had mentioned, I'd like to thank the tribal leaders who have joined us, in addition to our colleagues across the federal government in making this summit a success, especially, as I had mentioned, the White House's participation and, of course, the departments of both Interior and Agriculture, as well as from our friends from the state legislatures, our friends from Capitol Hill, private sector, and academia. I'd like to, of course, thank Kevin Frost, our Director of Indian Energy. Kevin is, as you know, a born leader. It is truly has been a remarkable experience working with him. He's indefatigable, he's passionate, and he is committed to bringing real results. The Secretary supports him, the Deputy supports him, and of course we all support him at the Department of Energy. And thank you, Kevin, for bringing all this together. And of course, his team and our entire team in the Department of Indian Energy and all of our programs for all the outstanding work. And of course, we wouldn't be here if it were not for the National Conference of State Legislatures, and so thank you all very much. So today we've gathered to talk about energy, and I'd like to take a moment to underscore that energy, what energy means. It's more than heat, light, and electricity. For us in the department, and I think for you in the audience, it means opportunity, self-determination, and self-sufficiency. You have heard us say in this administration that energy independence equals economic prosperity equals national security. And we mean that, we believe that, and it applies not only in the United States, but also across all of our Indian lands and Native Alaska corporations, and indeed across the world today. So that's why we're so dedicated to work with the Office of Indian Energy. And that's why we remain in this administration committed to an all-of-the-above energy strategy. From 2010 to 2018, the Office of Indian Energy invested over $70 million in more than 170 tribal energy projects valued at nearly $154 million. And from the beginning of this administration, across the department, the entire department, including our management teams, our offices of science, our labs, we have awarded $566 million to American, Indian, and Alaska Native communities and tribally owned businesses. This is through all of our PMAs, our labs, and our environmental management cleanup. And that's, we think, shows our commitment to ensuring that we spend our resources wisely, and it's all-inclusive. In the state of Alaska alone, some 60 Native villages have received funding from our Office of Indian Energy, including 35 that benefited from hardware installations. And altogether, we have seen the installation of more than 32 megawatts of new generation across tribal lands, which has led to a collective tribal savings of more than $14 million per year. This represents more than energy. It is a way to self-determination and a path to self-sufficiency. And today, I'm proud to announce that we are taking another step. Through our Office of Indian Energy, we are issuing a notice of intent for a funding opportunity announcement designed to help Native American and Alaska Native communities to harness their vast energy resources to reduce and stabilize energy costs, as well as increase their energy resilience and security. Through this funding opportunity, formerly called the Energy Infrastructure Development on Tribal Lands 2020, we intend to solicit applications from Indian tribes to deploy integrated energy generating systems, energy infrastructure, energy storage, and energy efficiency measures throughout their tribal community. We plan to make up to $15 million available under this funding opportunity, subject, of course, to congressional appropriations. Now, this follows on the announcement we made this past July of $16 million in funding for 14 tribal energy infrastructure projects. And we are particularly pleased that in the awards of those projects, that 70% of the total expenditure will go to tribes who had applied for the first time, 3 of which are based in Alaska. These projects represent significant investment that will yield tangible results to improve the quality of life for those communities. Combined, these projects mean more than 13 megawatts of new generation that will impact over 900 tribal buildings with annual savings of approximately $7.5 million for those communities. As Secretary Perry noted in his opening video, energy security is an essential component of tribal sovereignty and self-determination. Energy access is a critical component of energy security. And we recognize that tribes often face challenges in accessing funding for large energy infrastructure projects due to commercials lenders' lack of experience in this area. So in response, we issued the first solicitation for the department's Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program a year ago, this past July. Through that program, our department can guarantee up to $2 billion in loans to support all of the above energy development projects and activities for the federally recognized tribes and Alaska Native corporations. In doing so, we're fulfilling a gap between tribes and commercial lenders, and even more importantly, expanding energy access for tribal communities. Now, our mission is not to be the final lender of choice, but rather to help commercial lenders better understand the unique needs of energy projects that benefit tribes in order to pursue future projects. And these are projects that need not be restricted to being entirely on tribal lands. We continue to remain actively engaged with tribes that could be eligible for access to this program, and we are eager to learn about other energy projects that tribes might be considering. I understand and I see, and I've talked to our Loan Program Office booth, and if you haven't been over there, please take a few minutes to go over there, introduce yourself, and talk to them about some of the projects that you all are considering. I'm sure our staff would be worthy to engage in a conversation with you. Now, we are also eager to engage with our students. That's the next generation of our leaders. Throughout this summit, you've heard from both academic experts and education practitioners on the importance and urgency of inspiring the Native youth to pursue STEM education and careers. We agree. And we understand the necessity of developing a workforce to address the needs in tribal communities and accomplish our mission at the department. So we're working in partnership with the tribal communities and in concert with our 3 tribal working groups to create culturally relevant activities that engage tribal youth in STEM. Now, we have also partnered with Sandia National Laboratories for an internship program giving undergraduate and graduate students from tribal communities the opportunity to explore a variety of energy-specific topics. The lab also offers Dream Catchers, a STEM outreach program for middle and high school students with hands-on activities. The White House strategy on STEM education, released this past December, offered a vision in which all Americans have lifelong access to high-quality STEM education and where the U.S. is a global leader in STEM literacy. Now, we cannot do that without students from the tribal communities, and fostering STEM-educated students is of special interest to us at the department, since much of our mission depends on individuals in highly trained science and technology. Through the STEM Rising initiative, we connect you and our stakeholders to a variety of STEM-focused programs, internships, and fellowships offered by the U.S. Department of Energy, including the National Science Bowl, the Solar Decathlon, and the upcoming Cyberforce competition. Now, speaking of diversity in STEM, encouraging more women in STEM is an important part of our efforts, since only about a quarter of those involved in STEM careers are women. When it comes to innovators and technologists, we absolutely have to develop all of our potential talent. And for that reason, I was happy to learn that yesterday this summit brought together women from different professions within the energy sector. It is our hope that by doing so, by fostering STEM and training and development, we will encourage more women to have a positive and powerful impact in energy fields and tribal communities. There is such great potential on tribal lands, such an incredible potential in tribal communities. It's that potential that we want to see transformed into action. What's true for energy on tribal lands is true for America's energy landscape as a whole. And thanks to the power of innovation, the United States is producing more energy, more affordably, more cleanly, from a wider range of sources than ever before. And under the Trump administration, we are deploying every one of those sources in the all-of-the-above energy strategy for the nation. Today, the United States is the world's leader in oil and natural gas production. And now we're the second largest generator of wind and solar energy. Based on current projections, the U.S. is expected to become a net energy exporter next year for the first time in nearly 70 years. Today, we are exporting liquefied natural gas to 36 nations across 5 continents and counting, and by the end of this year, our LNG export capacity is expected to have grown by an astonishing 150% just from last year. possibly reaching 11 billion cubic feet per day. And we're also leading the world in reducing energy-related carbon emissions and are at the forefront of the drive for a cleaner energy world. Today, our generation sources in the United States, all new, with the exception of the Vogtle plant in Georgia, the nuclear facility, all of our new electricity generation that comes online today is natural gas and renewables. And they complement one another. And this has resulted, to a large degree, in us leading the world by orders of magnitude in actual emission reductions globally. We have reduced our own, as a country, our global emissions from 25% of the world's emissions down to 15%. And yet, we are leading the world in economic growth, and we are driving the global economy, and we are now leading the world in oil and natural gas production. We have released a life cycle study on the export of LNG into the global markets, and the life cycle of greenhouse gas study shows that through the use of the export of U.S. LNG, a lot of potentially can come from tribal lands and natural gas, that we are reducing emissions globally overall. And the United States is leading the world in actual reduction. The next country is not even close, and there are other countries who are emitting so much CO2 that it really matters not with what the other countries can do. So you all, we want you to be part of this move, and it's important that you understand the bigger picture and that you're all part of this. And we should all be proud as Americans to not only be able to help offset global incidents such as the bombing of the Saudi Arabia fields at Abqaiq. I mean, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that would have disrupted oil markets so greatly that we'd be probably looking at $120 per barrel of oil right now. And as a consequence of U.S. production, the global oil markets really hardly even flinched. I mean, it went up much, but now it's regulated. All of us are part of that. We should all be proud of that. We're all Americans, and we want to be a part of the future that continues those goals. We're also, as I mentioned that, okay. So, as great as that story sounds, and the federal government likes to think that, we're responsible for so much of that, the fact of the matter is that we in Washington do not have the wisdom that you all have on ground. We recognize that there are some 573 federally recognized tribes, which means that any federal government's approach to impose a one-size-fits-all on you is simply not the way to proceed. Our view and really write your own energy destiny. And for all of our diversity, the end goal is the key. It's to work together for a better future for Native Americans and Alaskan Native communities. It's one of abundance, security, of opportunity, self-determination, and self-sufficiency. Thank you very much for having me here this morning, and I hope you enjoyed the summit.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Sorry about that. We have called over to DOE headquarters to see if we could get that energy issue rectified here this morning. Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary. We appreciate it so much. Thank you. And we appreciate your presence with us today and your support of energy development in Indian country. Thank you so much. Another big round of applause for the Undersecretary. We will now move into our session on removing regulatory impediments. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Johnna Blackhair, Deputy Director of the Office of Trust Services at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and Darryl Lacounte, the Director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And as each of you begin to take your seat, we'll ask that you, once you make your way to the stage and get settled, that you'll please give us a brief description of what your position entails. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Mr. Darryl Lacounte and Johnna Blackhair. I want to make sure you...
It's hot. How do you do? I am Darryl Lacounte, as Mr. Gary Davis introduced me as. I am the Director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and it's a great job. I was reminded when the power went down here years ago, when the Bureau of Indian Affairs introduced their very first CIO, Chief Information Officer. We were in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it was colder than a well-digger's ass in Cut Bank, Montana. I remember that. But we got in there, and here's the first CIO of the Bureau. And it's all set up with these kind of monitors and a big meeting, and nothing. They couldn't get anything to work. And pretty quick, the CIO and his staff are scrambling like a bunch of rats after a Cheeto. And about 15 minutes in, this lady picks up a cord and says, "Does this need to be plugged in?" And yeah, that was the problem. Well, what we do at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, as the Undersecretary alluded to, there are 573 federally recognized tribes. We oversee approximately 56 million acres of trust land for the benefit of tribes and individual allotted Indians. And most of you are well aware a lot of those lands are owned by multiple owners. We have challenges with that, but we're working on it, and I think we're getting there. The number one revenue producer for these lands, and it's all 100% for the benefit of the tribes and individual Indians, the United States government does not take a dime of it, comes from energy, primarily oil and gas. But we do have other renewables, down to one coal mine, I think, but we had a couple until recently. But the unfortunate part about that is it's not equitable across Indian country. And like the old real estate brokers say, it was location, location, location. If you happen to be a Mandan, Hidatsa, Harikwa, there's one right there. Location was pretty good when it came to oil and gas as of recently. But I think we have less than 30 locations that have oil and gas production out of, like I said, 573 federally recognized tribes. And so while it is the number one revenue producer in Indian country, we also take money in from forestry, from grazing, from farming, from all various aspects of development of natural resources. Oil and gas is primarily it, but like I said earlier, those are isolated locations, and there's still, as all of you know, there's still plenty of poverty in Indian country. And so just so everybody is aware, it's not a level playing field if you're an Indian out there. That being said, I've been around essentially energy, oil and gas most of my life. I grew up in northeast Montana. Before the Bakken boom, there was another boom up there in the Williston Basin. And I've always wondered as a child why we suddenly got a brand new house in 1968. I'm old, yeah. I didn't understand why that was until I became the Land Titles and Records Manager in Billings, Montana. And I got to looking at records. And my grandfather's allotment, which my father inherited, suddenly got an oil and gas lease with a real nice bonus in 1968. And boom, we had a new house, which was very nice because the old house wasn't very nice. And to this day, That particular allotment, that tract, is still in my family, has never been drilled, but has been under lease since 1968, and keeps getting bonuses and keeps getting bonuses, now supports my mother. Energy, or the threat of energy, I guess, is a good thing in Indian country, and it can make people's lives much better. So again, location, my grandfather happened to be allotted in the right place in northeast Montana, and my family shared the benefits of that. Okay, I've probably rambled on long enough. I can pass this on to people who know what the hell they're doing. Johnna?
Thank you. My name is Johnna Blackhair. I'm a Chippewa Cree enrolled in Montana. The majority of my career has been working with the Northern Ute Tribe and the Southern Ute Tribe in the Southwest region and the Western Regional Office. Recently, I went to the Eastern region to work with the Eastern Coastal Tribes more for the experience in working with Indian services and self-governance and self-determination for self-governance tribes and Indian self-determination tribes. Last year, I came to assist Darryl in the role as the Deputy Bureau Director for Trust Services in this capacity.
And thank you for that.
And accepted the position. So working and having that knowledge of the boots on the ground and empowering Indian country really inspired me to pick up the challenges and finding an opportunity to advance some of the initiatives of this administration to elevate the issues in Indian country. So for the Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Trust Services, we work primarily to take a look at the processes, the policies, the appropriations, and identify where we have some opportunities to make some changes that could further advance Indian issues in the circles that we find ourselves in. I'm thankful that Darryl has an extensive background in Indian energy as well as title, because the initiatives that we're working with from my office is to bring our systems up to date, to start streamlining processes through our TAM system and digitizing a lot of the processes, to, robotics and automated systems as well. And the opportunity to develop portals so that we can see and share the information that we're working with at our Indian Energy Service Center. Earlier this morning, Carla Clark and I did a presentation for the Indian Energy Service Center to let you all know the ability to support our local agencies and our regional offices and direct service to do the transactions in support of the development out there. It's not limited to just the conventional energy. We also support renewable energy. The Department of Interior's top priorities include sustainable development in Indian country and the natural resources, increased revenues to support the department and tribal interests, and strike a regulatory balance. Coming in, we've had 3 GAO reports that we had to acknowledge and address and take those recommendations into consideration in working with our federal partners to advance Indian energy development. Those 3 GAO recommendations were a baseline that would help us direct the work and also improve our services to not hinder the energy development in Indian country. With that, we've had significant success with the CA processes. We were able to bring in the last 18 communitization agreements.
The government likes to throw acronyms.
BIA's acronyms, yeah, we have a lot. So for one royalty distribution and clearing out CAs for one reservation, we were able to provide 137 reservation codes, 2.4 million in one royalty distribution for 1,100 allottees, and that was not including the tribe's royalties we were able to provide. And so that working relationship with our federal partners through the Service Center has really provided us an opportunity to streamline processes and address the challenges that our tribal leaders have brought to our attention. The other thing that I've been able to bring some leadership to is the workforce strategic plan. We took a really good look at the nation's infrastructure regarding pipelines, rights of way, transportation, the manner that tribes are collecting royalties, and also with the opportunity to bring in employees through the service center and dispatch them as a strike team to fulfill those obligations, to meet the timelines and bring staff to that immediate need. The other thing with that is we have with the analysis is we were able to identify students that are at local tribal colleges and universities so that we can have internships, and they're working directly with tribes and tribal leaders in various capacities within our partnerships, not only for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And a lot of times we have our staff that we're bringing in as internships, they're being picked up by tribes or our federal partners to work in those capacities, such as the STEM program. Initially there was 35 students, and we have 115 students that are now actively engaged in Indian country to fulfill those positions. And we encourage that you have your students contact us in our office so we can fulfill more positions. We have so many positions out there that are needed to have our Native people working in these capacities, and would welcome them to federal service. This morning we talked about some of the successes and the added value of the Indian Energy Service Center, and I just wanted Carla to recap some of that information we provided this morning, because the group is a lot larger now. So Carla Clark is our acting director for the Indian Energy Service Center.
Carla H. Clark. I've known Carla a long time. I don't know what the H is for. I got to figure that out before it's over.
I'm not telling him, obviously.
She will.
I think it's hurry up.
I know. Just to give you a recap, the Indian Energy Service Center was funded and staffed in 2016. We currently have 23 employees from the BIA, BLM, and Honor. We look to add staff from OST and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in FY20. With that, our office was created to help promote and streamline Indian energy development out in Indian country. So it's been really good. We have staff that all sit in the same office, and we just, in collaboration, we've identified ways to identify streamlining processes, just answering real basic questions that can help the different agencies and what they're doing. Our staff is cross-training also in the different areas, so our BIA staff is not just performing BIA functions, they're also learning the BLM and the honor functions as well. So we can send them out to different projects nationwide and bring the workload into our office, and that allows us to be able to work on different projects at the same time.
And I would like to say the government in the past, well, probably still for the most part, is pretty much reactive to what happens. And the development of this service center allows us to be much more proactive. Like I mentioned earlier, Carla's from Fort Berthold Reservation. And when the boom hit there, the Aberdeen region really had nobody who knew a thing about oil and gas. And at the time, I was the deputy director in the Rocky Mountain region, and we had a lot of oil and gas people. Even though oil and gas was winding down, at least we had some folks. So we sent over to Fort Berthold to help them out. But again, there's no way Congress funds you for what potentially may happen. And I've always equated it to, okay, if they found diamonds on Fort Belknap, would we be expected to have a gemologist on hand? No. I mean, that's not the way it works. And so this service center allows us now, as she mentioned, with the strike teams and the expertise we have on board to address the next boom, because we don't know where it's going to be, and nobody knows where it's going to be, but there probably will be one. And this is one of the better things that the Bureau of Indian Affairs has done in the last 10 years. Even though it turned into somewhat of a political fight to get it done, we got it done. And it's really making a difference out there. And as Johnna alluded to, some of the numbers, some of the backlogs that she and I inherited when we got to D.C., early 18, I believe, we have addressed. But a lot of that was due to Carla and her shop in doing so. The other thing I would like to speak to a little bit, and then we can talk about some regulatory changes, which we're supposed to be up here to do, is Johnna alluded to the GAO high-risk energy findings that we inherited. Well, had either Johnna or I been here, we would have thrown 2/3 of them right back at GAO and said, this is not a problem, we have addressed it. But once you accept those things, which our predecessors did because they had no idea about the oil and gas industry, you're stuck with them. And to this day, we have implemented, 14 solutions to the 14 high-risk energy findings that we found, and I still don't think they're all closed out. But we're actually doing them in the field. The paperwork is just miserable. And the time we spent addressing things that we had already had in place were just lunacy. So it really makes a difference to have people sitting in these chairs that have some experience in the field. Our lives would have been a whole heck of a lot easier the last year and a half or two almost now. But anyway, Johnna, you can finish up, then we can, I'll just briefly hit. Okay, what we have done here recently with regulatory reductions, for the most part, have touched on the NEPA side of things. And it's not like we're circumventing NEPA at all. We're just using some common sense. And I can thank this Secretary, David Bernhardt, for that. Most of the time I'll go in a room with the political folks and feel like I know more about what I'm talking about than they do because they haven't spent their lifetime in Indian country like I have. But when I walk in there and it's a NEPA issue or an environmental issue, I feel like the dumbest one in the room. Those guys really know NEPA, and they know the environmental landscape, and they know some common sense solutions that don't really harm the environment at all, but they just make sense. I mean, we're just using common sense, using categorical exclusions, and not repeating, doing an environmental assessment on the same piece of equipment, or the same well 25 times. It's been done. There's no reason to continue it, and that's the major regulation reductions that we have done, and most of those were done by the department. When it comes to our oil and gas leasing program and some of the communitization agreements that they spoke to, we are pretty much bound by regulation, but if you learn them, they're not that hard to maneuver. The number one problem we have, as I mentioned earlier, was the multiple owner thing, when you have to go in and get consents from multiple owners to get a project started, developed, completed. And I don't have a solution for that. That's a congressional solution. We recently purchased a bunch of those interests to where the tribes now have a controlling interest in a whole lot more lands than they had before. So that down the road is going to pay dividends for development. And again, if the tribes are willing to develop, that's their prerogative, but it'll be fewer owners to approach to get consent to do those projects.
So to take from his comments there, part of some of the automation processes is to digitize those consents, and working with our trust asset management system. I'm fortunate that Darryl was one of the creators of that system to help us with title and encumbrances and our leases and documenting those as we lease these activities. We are going to online oil and gas lease sales and renewable lease sales through the Indian Energy Service Center, and we're also integrating interagency TAMS access so that we can have our federal partners having on the minute information, so we're not hindering any development out there in Indian country.
She threw another acronym at you. The Trust Asset and Accounting Management System is our system of record. And when she references TAMS, That's what she's talking about. We manage our land titles and records in there. We manage our leasing programs. We manage rights of way, range, forestry. It's a robust system, and yeah, I spent a lot of my life working on it, but I like what it does, and when she refers to TAMS, that's our system of record, and I'm proud to say I think it's far and away the best system in the Department of the Interior.
Yes, it is. It helps us with a lot of our title issues that we have, and taking that into a robotic automation processing capacity is going to help us further streamline our processes. One thing that I wanted to mention too is the Tribal Energy Resource Agreements, the TERA and the TITOs. So this last summer we had some listening sessions and had gone around Indian country to discuss the opportunities with TERA, and through the Indian Energy Service Center we're going to be able to utilize an awarding official and a contracting officer so that our strike teams can support tribes that are applying for those opportunities. And another announcement I'd like to make is Darryl and I have been involved with the USDA, working with them on the opportunities in the Farm Bill. So in November, we're going to be attending a signing ceremony with USDA to solidify that relationship so that our tribes could maximize their opportunities with USDA and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and our partnerships with the Farm Service Agency for the financing arm of those activities. And other than that, you know, I would like to invite you all to those types of events as we roll these out. And a couple of other things we accomplished was to provide the mortgage handbook, and we're working with HUD to assure that we have our housing and our opportunities for our tribal homeowners to be out there streamlining those processes, as well as providing guidance for the rights-of-way process. Carla talked a little bit this morning about how the Service Center supported training, not only industry, but tribal employees and federal employees that work in Indian country for energy. I guess we can open up to questions and answers. I'd like to hear some of the feedback from this conference.
I'd like to say thanks to DOE and David for putting this on. I think we need to do more of these types of things, so thank you very much. Yes? No, it's Raleigh. No. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Darryl. Good to see you too. I'll go ahead and get us started off. About 2 weeks ago, the Ute Indian Tribe testified before the House Natural Resources Committee on the relocation of BLM. Chairman Duncan and Business Committee member Ed Skak, who are here. One of the big issues that we testified on the relocation of BLM was BLM's involvement in the Indian energy permitting process, which as an oil and gas guy you know all too well. And concerns about, because I don't think there's any plans to move the BIA and Fish and Wildlife Service and all the other agencies out to Grand Junction, I think it is. And so concerns about, because we've spent the last 10 years bringing those agencies together in the Indian Energy Service Center and kind of getting sort of more of a one-stop shop approach. And now the leadership of one of those agencies is going to be out on its own in Grand Junction. And even with all the phones and email and internet in the world, it's just easier when you're sitting down the hall from the people you work with. So I don't know if this is more of a comment or a question as well, but it would be great if the Bureau of Indian Affairs was weighing in on BLM's relocation and how that impacts development on Indian energy resources, and appreciate your all's views on that.
Okay. Raleigh was, back in the day, Raleigh was instrumental in helping us in a different capacity with the Indian Energy Mineral Center. So thanks for that. The only time in my mind and in my vision that the move to Grand Junction is going to be of concern, and I'm not saying an issue, but of concern, is if something rises to that level. And what we try and do is resolve things at the lowest level possible. The field offices that work with the Utes aren't going anywhere. The Grand Junction piece of it, hopefully, I work with BLM here at this national level, and it's amazing the difference in working with a field office or a state office than it is working with the feds here. They don't have a lot of without insulting anybody, background in oil and gas here at this level. And most of it is done out in the field at the state offices or the resource offices. What's their other offices called? They have resource and field offices. So I'm not really concerned about it, but if things raise to this level, that's not good anyway. It doesn't matter where the heck you're at if it makes it to DC or Grand Junction. So that's my spin. Johnna, she's worked with BLM as long as I have. Well, she's not as old as I am, but yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have federal partner offices in all of our locations at the agency level, but for the Indian Energy Service Center, we have BLM working hand in hand with our federal partners there. With the talks of the move, we've had staff want to come and more staff come and move in with us. So, I see it as a positive where we have that federal working group together in support of tribal energy. Anything else?
Is it Harold? Is that the age?
Surely there's one more question.
We also have the knock.
There's a question, and then there were two.
Mine is real easy. Mr. Lacounte's bringing us something, and we're BIA. We've been under that guardianship for over 100 years. He gave a speech the other day to the United States. Everything was correct in that speech, except I can't buy a Cadillac for $4, and neither can he. I demand a Cadillac, so they're going to have to fund these programs. And that's why I want to thank you all for being here. I've been on every committee there is since 1990. What I'm going to say now is this. We have an opportunity here that we've never had, and I should know. I'm going to have Leo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro come and show you how our lives existed in 1920, and it's about the murders of my people over this money. But I want to commend everyone here, my brothers. I appreciate being here. I've stayed home a couple years. It's getting tired. But as chairman of the Osage Minerals Estate and Reservation, the only one in Oklahoma that we had to buy after the Civil War, I'm here to tell the United States, and we even talked about this yesterday at the White House, it's together and it's funding. And if you can't take care of your elder in this fossil fuels and energy, believe me, we know every problem there is in this world when it comes to Indians. Osages had to buy that reservation. Now we're having to work and complete this effort, and we cannot run our operations on the pennies for the dollars of $1 billion estate. So it's one question here. If they do not turn around in the United States fund your elements, because I'm a former housing police commissioner, and the list goes on, what are you going to give my children? What are you going to give my grandchildren? And the worst scenario, and I'd like to end with this, and I appreciate your time, my wife and I have got to pass away before my kids get inheritance. That's why I want the STEM here. That's why I made my daughter, got her 2,000 miles away from home, and I can't even sleep at night without her being there. But it's got to be because we have got to break this cycle. With that, I appreciate y'all. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Everett. I appreciate your comments, and to add to that, essentially, our job is to promote self-determination and tribal sovereignty. And Everett's comments put something out there that's front and center. I think every tribe in the world wants to be sovereign and wants to manage their own affairs. And when you see Everett Waller and the Osage Minerals Council, and they're not contracting the program that we manage, that probably tells you there's not the funding there to run the program, and they realize that. And so when you look across Indian country, you'll see tribes contracting and compacting programs, but you'll see a whole lot that aren't. And I think Everett hit on exactly what the reason is for that. But that is something that tribes and you folks need to promote. I can't do it. I'm restricted from lobbying Congress, and I am very restricted to supporting the president's budget. So I'll say that out loud. I'm retirement eligible, so I can say it.
Duly noted.
That others can't.
Oh my God. Well, that could have been a career terminating comment.
Noted for the record, sir.
Well, the Senate just passed their appropriations bill that gave you a lot more money, so.
Pilar.
Right? Hi, Darryl. How are you? Well, it has been. I'm going to ask you first about land into trust. When are they going to move off-reservation non-gaming back into the field and get it off of the piles that are on people's desks here, first of all? Second question is on NEPA. About a year and a half ago, you guys put out a request for comment on changing the categorical exclusions. I haven't seen anything finalized. Several of my clients commented around energy development and categorical exclusions for energy development to align with the USDA and DOE's categorical exclusions. So kind of what's the status of that? And third, Tara's Hearth Act. The Hearth Act approvals for leasing seems to be bogging down again. Any update on guidance for getting Hearth Act leasing regulations approved by tribes a little bit faster? And then last, Johnna, hi Tara. When are we going to get our Tara regulations
I'm writing all these down.
Who invited Pilar?
All energy regulated. All energy. Right?
If you'll join us for the next session on answers to Pilar's questions.
I've got a yes, no, maybe, I don't know.
Perfect. Spoken like
you
a
bring up some
true
good points.
non-BIA person. Yeah.
You bring up some good points. Regarding when the off-res non-gaming will go back to the field, I suspect... oh yeah, they will at some point, but it'll be a different administration, is what I'm saying. Okay, regarding Hearth Act, John and I took a look at that program when we got here, and we realized, okay, neither one of us are big on centralization, but that's a program that we think needs to be centralized. What's happening is the regions are processing, and then they come to central office for approval. Well, the regions don't have any one person assigned to it. So we are actively seeking somebody who's going to manage that program, working for Johnna Blackhair in the Division of Trust Services, or the Office of Trust Services, and that's what our solution is going to be to it. What else did she have in there? NEPA. Oh, okay. Yeah, I asked about that myself, Pilar. That's sitting in the RACA office, which is the Regulatory Affairs Office. So we've done everything that we were asked to do, and it's now waiting to go to publication. And I don't know if the department itself is holding that up, but I asked about that just last week, actually, and that was the answer that I received, that it's sitting in the Regulatory Affairs Office. Mm-hmm.
Tara, and to add to the Hearth Act, I just lost my Tara. Okay. So for the Hearth Act, we have the opportunity to bring on a solicitor dedicated to review and work with us. So we have a RSA with the solicitor's office to expedite the Hearth Act applications. So we're just waiting for that person to be identified. Right now, the majority of the Hearth Act applications are pending the solicitor's office, so that's where they're tied up.
And Pilar, you can appreciate this. Johnna said, I want that person sitting in my office, and I want them working on nothing but Indian affairs stuff, and I'm going to monitor that person.
Yeah, I said if I'm paying for them, then they're going to be in my office. Yes.
I would not want to be that person.
Yeah, so I also have somebody else working on other types of policy issues that I have another solicitor that's going to be working with us directly with our Indian Affairs office. And for the TARA, like I said this morning, we're going to have an awarding official at our Indian Energy Service Center to support the TARA applications that will be coming into our office. And hopefully we'll have a tribe that is going to apply that we could support in any of those functions that are contractable at the Indian Energy Service Center. Anything else, Pilar? No, that's it. Okay.
Well, I think, unless there's any other questions, we'd like to thank Mr. Lacounte. Carla, thank you. And Johnna, thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you do over at BIA. I know it's a laborious work that, is never short of new things to deal with.
It's
so
rewarding.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your work for Indian country. Well, we would like to now move into our last program before the closing of our summit, entitled United States Department of Energy, Office of Indian Energy, Technical Assistance, Capacity Building, and Funding. Our moderator/presenter is Lizanna Pierce, Deployment Supervisor. Lizanna, if you'd like to make your way to the stage, she's with the Office of Indian Energy at the United States Department of Energy. Lizanna's impressive bio can be found on the meeting app. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lizanna Pierce.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you all. I guess I'm last but not least, almost. For those of you I haven't met, again, my name is Lizanna Pierce. I've had the honor and the privilege to have worked on Indian Energy for the last 20 years, and there's been some great strides. And so we're going to begin. The first couple slides, I wasn't sure who was going to be in the audience or how much knowledge base. Our constituents really are the 573 tribes, 200 plus Alaska Village Corps, and the 13 regional corps, as well as the more recent legislation added intertribal organizations and then the tribal energy development organizations as well. And again, I'm not going to, everybody's reservation back home is different, but obviously the statistics, are staggering gaps in basic services, basic infrastructure in 219. Oops, did I go back? There we go. So the barriers is really what we try to, with the funds and resources we have, address. Lack of access to capital, as you all know, is an issue, and then underdeveloped infrastructure. One of the studies that Dr. Jones, and Dr. Nessifer did while interns for the program is identify through interviews of those in Indian country and tribal energy some of the more significant barriers that they identified. Again, funding and financing seems to be always number one. Infrastructure, again. So the trends, the same trends. Leadership, internal capacity, education, customers for power, for export. And then I did add a couple slides here about the Department of Energy. You've heard from quite a few folks. It's large and diverse. There's energy, there's science and innovation, and nuclear safety and security. There are a number of programs within the department, and thanks to the Energy Policy Act of 2005, tribes advocated, it seems like for 4 or 5 years, I had files like this long of all the different iterations of that legislation, but they wanted an assistant secretary-level office. And I'm going to skip that. So, guiding authorities for us is the Energy Policy Act of 1992, as amended in 2005, as amended in December of 2018, was the last iteration, gives the office broad latitude to promote tribal energy development, efficiency use, reduce and stabilize energy costs, address and strengthen infrastructure, and bring electric power to Indian lands and homes. Another section of the statute really is education planning, gives the director quite a bit of latitude for energy efficiency studies, planning, and so forth. So it's really broad. You heard the Undersecretary speak about the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program. Again, that's relatively new. It has a large amount of funds to guarantee, and I won't go over that in any detail. Again, I think we have the experts there. So, the Office of Indian Energy. Mission is to maximize the development and the deployment of strategic energy solutions that benefit tribal communities, help provide knowledge and skills and resources needed to implement your energy projects. I go back? Nope, I'm almost up here. Can I go back? No, they didn't let me go back. No. There we go. So, just some pictures. I'm a visual person. I love pictures, and these are tribal projects. I think it's important. I mean, this is why we're here. And I won't go through each of those, but again, lots of pictures. We'll go through a bunch of them. The Indian Country Energy and Infrastructure Working Group is an advisory group to the office, again, to bring in and understand and listen and hear some of the issues so that we can address those. So the deployment program really has 3 components: access to capital, technical assistance, and education and capacity building. Access to capital is really financial assistance, predominantly grants thus far. Innovative financing strategies. You know, how do you structure these for tribes to access production tax credits? I mean, it's very complex. And then the loan guarantee program, which is actually through DOE's loan program office. I think you heard earlier that the office since 2010 has invested over $70 million in more than 170 tribal energy projects valued at $154 million. That's a picture of an interactive map that we have on the website. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can, click on it. Every project has a summary, every PowerPoint presentation, final reports, etc. So it's pretty transparent. Sort of when I started, people would call, I know we did a report, do you have the report? So anyway, the solution was to put it all on the website. We've worked with many tribes since 2010. We've worked with many tribes before that. And we have information on the tribal projects actually going back to 94, 95 based on the 1992 legislation. So it is a huge repository of information. We have an interactive map. We have a project sortable database, if you will. Try to capture as many project successes as we possibly can. That's why we're here. I mean, summaries. We do have annual presentations. We have an annual program review. I'll get to that a little bit later, but it's cool. So usually there's 40 or 50 different tribes telling their stories. The intent there is to bring folks together. Magic happens. You learn from others' mistakes, and actually celebrate successes. So, this is our average funding over the years since 2010, less than $8 million. Just remember that, because it's usually as we go through, and I know the Undersecretary spoke of some of the numbers, which are mind-boggling, that seed money, if you will, has impacted in Indian country, less than $8 million a year. So the projects, this is a pie chart of the types. We have some planning, feasibility studies as well, development, which is the Valley of Death. And then since 2010, a lot of the focus has been putting hardware in the ground, making immediate impacts to people, to their electric bills, to revenue, so that those funds could be used for other priorities of the tribes. So in July, there was announced $16 million for 14 tribal energy projects. Again, that $16 million could be 13 megawatts of new generation in Indian country. $7.5 million a year collectively. That's, it starts adding up. It's huge. It has massive impacts to small villages in Alaska, small communities, large communities. So the competitive process, the grants are through a competitive process, and the sort of stats here, which I think actually are pretty powerful. We have issued 15 funding opportunities since 2010, nearly 600 applications valued at $500 million. We funded 94% of all meritorious applications, and I would say that other 6% is usually because, for whatever reason, something changed and the tribe opted not to accept the funds. We funded 30% of all the applications we've received, which I think is huge. I don't have good numbers on that DOE average, but it's going down. As money becomes scarce, the competition gets greater. I think 30% is a pretty good number. And so, with less than $8 million a year, we funded 70 hardware projects, 32 megawatts of new generation, and $14 million a year. And you compound that for 20, 25 years for some of these technologies over the life of the system, that starts being big money. Less than $8 million a year. That's huge. Look at what we could do together. This is like pretty cool stuff. With a little bit of seed money. We do have funding resources. We have an energy development assistance tool on the website. If you want to do a strategic planning, you want to do this, it kind of like helps you figure out which agency and which buckets of funds to start looking at anyway. We try to keep up a current funding opportunities list. If it smells like money, it's for tribes. If it's energy related, try to get it up there. Ongoing technical assistance, ongoing loan guarantee programs and so forth. Those resources are there as well. This isn't me. We also offer technical assistance to the best of our abilities within our resources. The types of technical assistance is technical analysis, really project-specific things. Is there a barrier? Is there interconnection issues? Is it hardware? So we can reach into some of the laboratory network, which is huge, to provide some of this assistance to help break down whatever barriers that particular project has. Financial analysis, again, for some of these projects, it's very complex, piece parting together different colors of money, trying to capture whatever incentives there might be. And so we can try to help with that as well. Strategic planning, I think I've heard in a number of the sessions, it all starts kind of with a vision, with a plan. And we can help facilitate that dialogue as well. Not our plan, y'all's plan. So you got to get together and have the plan, the vision to go forward. And again, that's just going over the strategic energy planning. The workshop, we can come, a couple days, give you some basic information on what resources and things, energy resources might be an option for you, help facilitate that dialogue. So here's some stats. I guess by now you realize I like pie charts. I'm a visual person. We have completed 329. Obviously, there's more in the works as well, and the different flavors. A lot of it's technical analysis. Here's more pie charts. Since 2010, the distribution of technical assistance requests, interesting enough, is about 60% 40, which is kind of 573. If you do the math, I don't know. It just works out that way. And by state, obviously, Alaska is on the far left. And then I'm just going to pause here a moment. Some of the feedback that we've received. I guess the one thing I didn't say is the technical assistance is free of charge to tribes. You ask, we try to the best of our abilities within our resources to help. There's no charge. It's a simple online email. What do you want? Start the dialogue and see what we can do. Some additional resources. There's a energy resource library. Studies, reports, information, there's no end. It's kind of TMI, too much, but it's all there. There's curriculum. I couldn't find it this morning on somebody's phone, but it is there. So there's a whole series of curriculum courses, both directed for sort of staff and then leadership courses. We also have monthly webinars, usually the last Wednesday of every month, except for not this week. So it's next Wednesday, I believe, 11 o'clock Mountain. We try to bring in a lot of case studies, some foundational speakers. There's a planning committee, again, tribal representatives of what subjects would be important, and draw from ask too many favors, bringing in people. So it's a low-cost way to maybe get information on different subjects, energy-related subjects. Some additional resources, lots of research that's been done over the years. I won't go into some of that. Solar in Alaska, you've seen some of that this week as well. We have the webinars. Again, join the listserv. You'll find out everything I know goes out of the listserv, goes on the website. It's probably the best way to get the information. If it's about funding opportunities through TED's group, through USDA, if it's through the Division of Energy and Minerals, we try to capture all of that as well and get it out. The office funded with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory to develop sort of the first of its kind interactive geospatial application for tribes. So all of this information is there. We've got the data layers, and the intent here is to help maybe do the first screening on what energy options might be available, what transmission might be available. We have the different data layers, energy resource information, there's infrastructure, there's environmental information in there, efficiency, and electricity and natural gas prices. So this is why we're here. And I love pictures. And I'm not going to speak to each of these, but I will say there's plenty of people that have been here over this week that can. I think I saw Anthony, so he can speak to the Seneca Nation's 1.5 megawatt wind turbine. Can't remember when they first started some of their planning, like 2006. So some of this takes a while, but if you stick around long enough, you can see it reach fruition. Pecorís Pueblo, 1 megawatt, very small pueblo. Some work in Alaska. Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium focuses on the sanitation system. There's huge efficiencies that can be gained there above ground, trying to keep things flowing and pumps working. It's a massive amount of energy that it takes to do that. For the village of Selawik, I mean, $200,000 plus a year. That's starting to be big money for a small village. So again, celebrating successes. Paula Band installed a huge solar. We even have, Solar Spokane, the Housing Authority. They had the fire come through and some, it shifted. We've got to take care of our own. What happens? How do we keep operating, keep those emergency services? So they've really plastered solar on all their buildings. So hopefully they won't be cut off again. Again, some tribal successes. I think Roderick, did I see him? There you go. We have the Chinook Wind Group. And then that's cool, wind in Alaska. What's even cooler, in my mind, is using that excess wind capacity for heat. Heat is pretty powerful in Alaska. Electricity, lights are good, but, heat's pretty important. And I think putting thermal stoves in homes, it's made huge impacts. And Dave's around somewhere this week. He worked, when I first met him, he was working with Yukon River Intertribal Watershed Council and Anativik Pass, some efficiencies. It made a huge difference for those people. Solar in Fort Yukon. A couple other Alaska, Huslia with the biomass project. We have Hughes, I think they spoke about that yesterday, I believe it is. Solar, the batteries, I think, are coming soon. Solar works in Alaska. Some other in the lower 48, we have Bishop Paiute. They've really tried to use solar for their low-income houses to reduce the energy costs for those families. Saboba Band put in a megawatt solar facility. And again, in Northway Village, we have efficiency in solar again. Solar's sexy, everybody wants one, It's true. Insulation is not very sexy. Menominee, they did some efficiency biomass, combined heat and power. We have Southern Ute, 1.3 megawatt, and then Rosebud, again, for their low-income housing, using solar as well to try to offset those electricity prices. Sunny's around here somewhere. There's a great video on Box Power website, I believe it is, and if you Google that, the solar system, and they spoke to it the other day, and I believe they've got batteries funded for that as well. Before and after, here's the pictures of the powerhouse at Fort Yukon. The before's on the top, obviously. And that was a long time coming project, 10 plus years. But we definitely did a major happy dance for that one. And then we have solar in Wisconsin as well. And Alaska Village Electric Corp has done quite a few. They partner with various villages. This one is Oscarville and Bethel. And there's a number of others. And then again, just celebrating successes. That's me.
And I'm going to leave it here because I think this is a unique opportunity for people who want to know sort of broadly from coast to coast, Alaska down, what tribes are doing across the nation, whether it be, solar in Alaska, solar in Wisconsin, solar down in Arizona. It's pretty cool, to hear those stories. So again, we open it up to all of Indian country, so you're welcome to come to Colorado in November. Thank you.
You absolutely.
I need to apologize to Kevin Frost. I thanked David Frost, and he's the guy that interviewed Nixon, so I apologize. DOE and Kevin Frost. I wanted to clean that up.
Noted for the record, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a remarkable summit, and it's been my great honor to serve as your Master of Ceremonies for the third consecutive National Tribal Energy Summit. I've had the opportunity to watch this important event grow as it engages tribal communities and brings together one of the most important federal agencies in the United States, the Department of Energy, to directly engage and empower tribal leaders and stakeholders across Indian country. I know you've all been inspired by informative sessions and panels with powerful and impactful speakers and presenters who have imparted vital information to you so that you may return to your communities and share this knowledge and, importantly, implement it into your energy development plans. It's vital to the future of Indian country that the diversification of our economic development portfolios include energy as a priority. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking part in the 2019 National Tribal Energy Summit here in Washington, D.C. We've got a number of people to thank for organizing and bringing together this important summit. I'd like to thank our meeting organizers, the staff of the National Conference of State Legislatures, and that includes, and if you'd stand, Mr. Jim Reed, I'm not sure if everybody's in here, but Brooke O'Lean, Kim Tyrell, Gretchen Dubois, Melanie Horton, Tansy Moore, Christy Hartman, Ed Green, and Tricia Simmons. Ladies and gentlemen, it takes a lot of energy to put these things together. If you'd please stand and give these good folks a round of applause, please. Thank you. And if you could remain standing at this time, I'd like to bring Mr. Luke Duncan, the chairman of the Ute Tribal Business Committee, Ute Indian Tribe of the Wintah and Ouray Reservation, to provide our closing invocation, and then if you'll just hold on momentarily, we'll have final closing remarks from Director Frost. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Luke Duncan.
Before I get into that, I'd like to make a couple introductions. I'd like to introduce Councilman Ed Sikakaku, representing the White River Band. If you'll wave, thank you. And also Raleigh Wilson, are you there? Right there, one of our Legal Eagle people. And I wish that our people years ago that came to D.C. to sign the treaties had people like that. As you're all aware, we didn't. I remember stories told to me by my grandmother. My grandfather was one of those that came to D.C., one of our traditional chiefs, which we don't have anymore because of the government structures that we're under right now. They took that away from us. And they would come to the central station, and they would tell me that the old people, they would hold hands to keep from getting lost. That was the main transportation at that time. And they told stories how they came into that. And I envisioned that. I've been there a few times to Central Station, and I see them. But also, in saying that, I want to say that tribal people, traditional people, we all know that those people are with us today. We depend on them. We pray to them. We make offerings to them. That's where our strength lies. And it's a constant battle to be in tribal government, to be a representative, constant. And we've heard some good things here. And we come together this week. We come together as tribal leaders, as people here, some of you that are helping tribal nations to achieve what we can on this land. And you know as well as I do where we are as Native American people. We were put on reservations, lands that had nothing, desolate lands. And now as it comes, the Great Spirit, He gifted us oil and gas, whatever we have there. And, as we get into that, we also see that is what they want now too. It seems that our fight never stops. And with that said, I want to say that times are changing. And I want to say that I'm thankful that I was invited here by Kevin. And thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. And I have a lot of respect for Kevin. And when I first met him, he was a tribal council member and eventually ended up here. And I have a lot of respect for him. And I know where his heart is. His heart is here with his people. He's trying to help his people and do whatever he can. And I say thank you, Kevin. A lot of respect to you. Also, Gary Davis, I want to thank you for everything you've done up here on the stage and to keep this coordination going. I want to thank you. Known to me and my family, my daughters, as Lightfoot. And I texted a picture of him that I took yesterday to them. They were all excited. And I found him in D.C. So thank you, Gary. Also, I want to acknowledge Ray Frost. And when I first came, I talked to him this morning, and to sit down next to him, and we're from different reservations, but we're Utes, to sit there and talk to him in our language, the dialects that we have. It means so much in here. It explains so much where we are. A lot of respect to you, Ray. Thank you. Good to see you again. And with that said, I want to say that I hope that what we came here to do, we share things here. But the people that were sitting here, they are the policy makers. They are the ones that should go. I heard a senator speak yesterday and talked about the problems that we have. And I believe he's an Indian himself. We have the problems. We can talk about it. But people in the position here, they're in a position where they can make changes for us, where they can make life better for us. We are here because of our people. We are here for survival of our nations, our Indian nations. That is what we're here for. They sent us here. They depend on us. And we must never forget that. From the smallest child to the oldest person. And never forget why we are here. But our strength as Native people in our nations is with the Great Spirit. And it's with the Great Spirit every day we pray. For our children, for our families, for our tribal members, for this world. And as Native people, we care about the environment. We care. And there are things that we do where sometimes we ask for forgiveness, things that we're involved with. We ask that the spirits and the Great Spirit understand what we're doing to help us in that way. So today I want to say that I'm thankful again to Ray for asking me to do the closing prayer. And with that being said, I'm going to pray for all of us. Pray for our homes. Pray for our people. Pray for what we have, that it be waiting there for us when we get home. Our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will be there to take care of us and take care of each one of you. And whether you're riding on a plane, you're driving, and we ask the Creator to watch over you, that you will get home in a good way and have that good feeling, knowing that you're taking something back to your people, wherever you come from. And that's the way we believe. And now, with summer coming to an end, a lot of our ceremonies on the reservations have sat down for another year. Our people have sacrificed this summer in dances so we can survive for another year. Next year we'll do it again, our young men. So with all that said, I'm going to say the prayer in our own language, the Ute language, a language that I was born into. One of God, by which in Jesus. Avich Venam Chinrike, the witch Toyach Makem. The Ravich Micus. When we get the murder name, I capitum. I can use Avich one. Poop and Panak and Ivich, bird Ivich. I can Monoctus Ivich, Unoctus, Canivet, and Namnami Iviches. When we get them, I capture us. Puavanam Nami, I get Avich one. A chick and Panamian, Puvanamian, and Iviches. I can use Avich one. Monoctus is Ivich, my cam. Who the movie to witchy? Avich one. The witch aided the movie to which in them, I capture my cam, one of God, Pavish Jesus. Most kind of Enrique to me. The ones that put this on for us, Mykinus. Mamus Aikapchum, Kevin Ivich, Moscan Gary Iviches, Mamus Ivich, Tamuch Ivich, and Mamus one Mykinus Avich one, Chichigavich and Mamus Wickham. You would have moved to which you have one of God, Avicha, the Requach, you want to be my, to which Toyach, one of God, Mykem. Aikapana Mykinus Avichon, Tamochina Mykem, Mavukanam, Namuimanok Mykinus Avich one. Mykinus Urasap, Avich you want to Tawai, Aho. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated, and please, a big round of applause for Mr. Luke Duncan, Chairman, U Tribal Business Committee. Thank you for your good words, sir. At this time, it has been just such a phenomenal event, and only proper at this time to call upon Director Kevin Frost, who runs an extraordinary Office of Indian Energy here on behalf of DOE for you. And I'd like to call on him now to deliver the final remarks of the 2019 National Tribal Energy Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a strong and good round of applause to Mr. Director Kevin Frost.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Chairman Duncan, Ed, for making the journey out here. It does mean a lot. It also means a lot to have my father start this summit off and deliver that first invocation. These things matter to us as tribal peoples. And it's one thing that I gave you a little bit about who I am yesterday, and a little bit about how I run this office and what the vision is for the future. But most importantly, some of what you heard Chairman Duncan talk about with our histories, with our tribal peoples and our tribal nations. Those are things that we carry with us each and every day. Absolutely do we have histories, some of them filled with sadness, some of them filled with tragedy. But whether or not you're a tribal leader or you're a tribal member or a descendant, these are the things we carry on our shoulders every day. And these are things that we have to work through in order to make our communities better. But each day that we can make it through gives us an opportunity to create the change for the next day. I'd like to thank everyone once again for your participation, attendance, and unbridled passion for bringing meaningful, positive change to Indian country. Those words cannot express enough how grateful I am to see conversations being spoken, partnerships being made. But always keeping in mind as we're at this summit, that it's the tribal priorities that are at the forefront. And that's what matters most in Indian country. It's allowing the tribes to define their own future as they see fit, to utilize the resources as they see fit, and to understand the complex histories we have that we have to overcome in order to create these partnerships. This summit has once again proven how great things and achievements start with ideas that you bring to the table. And these are ideas that emanate from the very lowest levels within our communities. I know what it means to be a former council member, to have your people elevate you to that position, to put you in that position, to carry those responsibilities. As Chairman talked about, with our youth culture, with our sun dancers, taking on those responsibilities for their own families, for their communities, for their futures. But that's what we do as Native peoples. We honor and pay respect to our ancestors and to our elders. And when you're young and you're taught traditionally, you're always told, get up early before the sun rises. Get to work. Do what needs to be done. We have a lot of great tribal leaders in here. We've had a lot of great tribal participation. And we talked about having our Native American women warriors present the colors. And it's great to see our women in those roles. It's important to see those women in those roles, because it shows us not only the strength they have, but the courage to meet their responsibilities and needs of their family day to day. We have our men who are warriors as well. But we must also remember that being a warrior isn't just fighting. Being a warrior is doing the day-to-day tasks that you need, not only for your family, but for your tribal communities. I'm in a different role now as the director of this office. It's a title, and it may be an important one, but underneath it all, I'm still a tribal member, a member of my community. And it's utilizing that focus that allows me to cross some of those bridges, that allows me the opportunity to educate, even within my own building, to those that want to learn. Every day we talk about our interactions, and I was raised to be an ambassador as well as a leader. There aren't that many Utes out there. There aren't that many Southern Utes. But I want to make sure when you do meet one, you meet one hell of a Southern Ute. One that's going to break those molds. One of the ones that's going to show you there is capacity. There is leadership. The same thing I see out here in this crowd today, the same thing I've seen over these past couple days. Our tribal leaders taking those roles and responsibilities on their shoulders for their people, meeting their energy needs, and understanding that energy is the nexus for everything we want to accomplish on our tribal lands. It has to begin with energy. And that's why this discussion was so important. And that's why that title was so relevant. Tribal energy, powering self-determination. We will get back to that day of autonomy. But it takes those small, simple steps. And the most important step, if you do not have the capacity, and I understand this as well being in that position, is to ask for help. But asking for help is not a weakness. Asking for help is a strength. But that's what this office is positioned to do. It's there to help you, to assist you. Congress stood up this office for that mission. It was important enough to create this within the Department of Energy. And it's important enough that we engage actively with our tribal communities and make sure we meet those needs. I introduced you to my team earlier at the beginning of this summit. There's a reason for that. They're the touch point for everything we do. They're the institutional knowledge for what the office has overcome. Every day we struggle with obstacles like any other tribal nation. But every day we work hard. We put our heads down. We don't ask for any type of recognition. We're here because we want to be here. And we're here because we know that maybe one day, when we fulfill our mission, our office can begin to do other things. And that's what's important. Those small strides this office makes day to day. The nimbleness and the flexibility we have from our entire IE team cannot be understated. Yesterday I spoke about the women in energy. And the interesting part is we kind of chuckled about it outside a few hours ago. Our entire IE team is majority women. And we chuckled and said, you know what? Maybe if it was a man, half the work maybe would not have gotten done. But that's just one thing that we talk about, and that's the importance of also having that female perspective within the office, but being respectful of that perspective and integrating that perspective into how we run our affairs. So again, I would like to thank all the members of my IE team I can't thank you enough. This is not my office. I am just a steward for a few years. But while I'm here, I want to make sure we run things correctly. We run things efficiently and effective. But most of all, I want to make sure every step we take is a positive impact to Indian country. Because we all know that one misstep here in D.C. can have seen and unforeseen ramifications for our tribal communities. So we must always be cognizant of that and how we interact on a daily basis. We also heard from the Seneca Nation of Indians and how you can take an energy project from inception to completion. It does not matter whether it's renewable or it's conventional. The idea is this is their destiny that they want to craft for themselves. We also had Gila River Indian Community Utility Authority feature their work on both producing and economizing electricity. We've had a lot of great discussions. We've had great representation from Alaska, Metlakatla, Unalaska, Chalista region. Those things are important that you made the journey out here. So thank you very much for doing that. It brings a lot to the discussion. When we did have those meetings with the Vice President, it was one of the times that I've ever seen Alaska being invited to some of those meetings. So thank you, Councilman Hudson, for speaking on behalf of your community. I appreciate that, and I understand what that means. Thank you, K.O. Booth, for coming out as well, providing that support for your tribal member. Ed, providing that support for your chairman. Those are things we like to see. Hickoria, also for coming out. Navajo Nation here as well. We have a lot of great communities out here. 3 affiliated tribes that help sponsor some of this event. But 3 affiliated tribe has also been working very hard. We have the Pueblo of Pewaukee here as well. Small communities, but small communities can create and be the beginning, that spark that we need for great change in Indian country. Doesn't need to be the people at the front. It can be those that we don't hear about. I'm also excited to the prospect of involving our youth, our next generation of Native American leaders into this conversation. It's important that we, as tribal peoples, begin to appreciate education and what it can bring those benefits back to our communities. It's difficult, I know. It's difficult once you get those degrees and you get the experience to come home. But that's what this office is about. If we can power your electrification needs, that leads to economic development. That may lead to you being able to bring back housing so your people can return. And they can work for your people. And that's how that cycle begins, and it continues and continues. And everybody rises. I'm also pleased to I want to say thank you for all of those that were involved in the equity and energy discussion. It's a very important topic here at DOE, but it's one that cannot be overlooked. There are a lot of offices that are incorporating the tribal aspect into what they do, and they all look to Indian energy, in some cases, as a tip of the spear. And that's why, once again, I'm going to say this, I'm so thankful for my staff. Givey up in Alaska, Lozana leading the deployment team in Golden. These are important people that know the communities well and interact with them. I'd also like to point out that for Alaska, we have signed an interagency agreement with the Denali Commission to provide localized technical assistance for Alaska. Because Alaskans should be serving Alaskans. They know the communities, they know each other. I've heard this phrase before, and I'll say it on Alaska's behalf. It's a large state, but it's very small at the same time. So we also have to be aware of that in the Office of Indian Energy, how we interact with tribal communities and put their perspectives first. And in some cases, have some empathy with what they're going through. As we talk about the evolving financial landscape and how we adjust to its demands, it's also important that at the beginning of this summit, the first keynote that was delivered spoke about the gig economy, where Indian country is always left behind. or is always late to the conversation. But as Indian country becomes more adept at how they run their affairs and how they handle themselves, they're beginning to see themselves at the forefront. And a case in point would be with renewable energy. Indian country is leading the way. But even as Indian country leads the way, we must not also forget our other tribes that use conventional fuels, because that's equally important, how they define their destinies. And we know that these types of endeavors have the potential to generate billions of dollars annually. And we want to ensure that the Native American population is represented and able to capitalize on entrepreneurial opportunities. And we would like to increase engagement through educational programs and also the alumni that come from these programs. The subject of self-determination is not new to Indian country. In fact, in July 1970, when former President Nixon delivered that special message to Congress, paving the way for Indian self-determination through his Indian Self-Determination Education Act, we've seen different tribes and what it meant to them in terms of either being a direct service tribe or a self-governance tribe or a hybrid. But these things matter, and that's why that discussion was important, to talk about the next 50 years and to see how tribes will define their destiny in the next 50 years. We also heard from both Secretary Perry on the first day and Undersecretary Menezes today that self-determination includes each tribe determining their own self-realized goals and objectives, which I believe carries with it a collective responsibility for each and everyone in this room to go back to their respective tribal communities and build a better today, while encouraging the next generation to continue the good work by building upon the momentum we start today. I'd also like to remind everyone that the Undersecretary did speak about our notice of intent. We do have copies of it out there on our, at our booth. So please, before you leave, take a copy and look over it. And if it suits your tribe's needs, apply for one of our grants that will be coming next year. The important thing is, as we grow up, we introduced a new topic area 4. And this is something we've been working on as an office, that we've been working on collectively, in hopes that it will actually benefit tribal communities. But the goal here is to make sure that as a tribal community, our door is open at Indian Energy and at DOE. But it's your responsibility as a tribe to walk through that door. And when you walk through the door of the Department of Energy and Indian Energy, you have a reliable partner that's going to be there with you from the beginning to the end. I would like to thank our partnering organization, NCSL, for helping to organize the summit, along with our staff at Indian Energy. I'd also like to thank the staff here at the Westin for providing all the hard work that went into lifting this summit and making sure it was a success. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you again for coming. And it is important that you have takeaways from this summit, because we also understand how much it costs your people to come out here. And in some cases, that impacts your budget. I know this because when we went to the interior of Alaska, I've seen how much some of their tribal budgets are. And if they can make do with what they have on their tribal budget, it's quite amazing that they're able to grow and they're able to deal with some of their, not only their issues, but also look at electrification and energy as one of their goals as well. So we must always take that into consideration, that cost-benefit analysis as well. And that's why this office is tasked with making sure it's fiscally responsible. The mantra in the office is every dollar we save can be put into a tribal project. And that's important. In some cases, a couple $1,000s is a difference. And it's a huge difference for our tribal communities. I would also like to thank my colleagues at DOE, the Loans Program Office, for helping sponsor this event. And they really did sponsor this event. So again, thank you, Loans Program Office, for all your hard work you do in Indian Country. I'd also like to thank our representatives from CI, Amanda Quinones and Matt Manning, as well. They do a lot of hard work when it comes to interacting with tribal communities within our Department of Energy. And I want to make sure that when I talk about DOE, there is an unwavering commitment to Indian Country, and it's there to help create positive growth towards each tribe's energy goals. This endeavor begins with working together towards a defined result, but it is up to the tribes to define that result. We understand that as we've progressed through the decades, there are tribes that have capacity, and there are tribes that are building capacity. And it's about time that we respect that. So in saying that, I wish your families the best. I wish your people the best. Safe travels home. Thank you so much for coming out here this year to the 2019 National Tribal Energy Summit. Could I have everyone rise, please, for the retiring of the colors?